Good morning to everyone again, and welcome to our webinar today, Expert Perspectives in Dining Out in the Restaurant Industry. Today is the first webinar in our new series focused on discretionary consumer behavior. And to start off our new series, we welcome two very special guests, Ming Tsai, owner and chef at the Blue Dragon Restaurant and host of TV show Simply Ming, and Sooho Choi, EVP and Global Head of Travel and Hospitality at Sapient, for a discussion with Bernie Yu, SVP Corporate Strategy at ADARA. We'll begin our webinar today with the latest data and insights from ADARA shared by our Chief Marketing Officer, Carolyn Corda. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, Carolyn Corda is an industry leader in customer data and predictive intelligence. As the Chief Marketing Officer of ADARA, she's responsible for aligning the brand with the company's expanding mission and growing goals. Prior to ADARA, she was a marketing director at Accenture, where she led the applied intelligence practice for the travel sector. Before that, Carolyn was a senior executive at Epsilon with responsibility for developing and launching new data solutions. With that, I'll hand it over to Carolyn to start our webinar for the day.
Thank you, Niharika, and welcome all. We'll start with a few notes on our COVID Resource Center, and then we'll dive into some of our latest trends. First, a reminder, all the slides you're seeing today will be sent out after the webinar. For those who aren't familiar with ADARA, you might wonder where the data I'm presenting today comes from. We have over 270 consumer brands that share their data with us, including some you likely recognize: United, Marriott, Singapore Airlines, and Travelport. We're focusing today on dining trends, and you'll note ADARA's table reservation data comes from leading booking sites, such as OpenTable. As a result, we have a lot of data across the spectrum of consumer behavior. To give you an idea of the breadth, for travel, we typically see over 14 billion searches a year and almost 1 billion air and hotel bookings. We're able to dive deep on transaction behavior, as most of our 1 billion profiles have on average 30 data points per profile. We've made a lot of our trend data available on our website. It's organized by region: US, EMEA, and APAC. You'll see the URL here so you can access the data yourself. We do update it daily, so check back for the latest. The insights you're seeing today have been developed by ADARA's brilliant analytics team. Of course, you're welcome to reach out to them if you're interested in custom reports and insights. You'll find it easy with the purple request button. Also, if you do have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. As we go through the slides, I encourage you to think about the findings on two levels. One, what are the implications for your business today? And two, how did the findings change your view of the overall pace of recovery? For my last slide, I'll be again offering my scorecard for how the industry is tracking toward recovery. The session today is the inaugural webinar of our new series focused on discretionary consumer behavior. While those who have been tuning in every couple of weeks know that previously our lens has been travel and the COVID recovery, we're pleased now to expand our scope and look at the wider array of behavior as a way of understanding consumer vitality. We chose that term, vitality, to connote the financial capability to spend on dining, entertainment, and travel, along with the big ticket items, such as cars and houses, and to capture the concept of confidence in health protections and safety as consumers engage more outside the home and as venues open up. On the slide here, we're charting this as a set of stages consumers transition through, from early recovery activities such as dining, staying at hotels, flying, along with other signals of financial strength, such as shopping, home improvement, and auto purchases. For each topic, we'll be exploring the drivers and implications of the trends, what's contributing to the shifts, what's the role of financial vitality, differences by age and by region, and we'll be showcasing experts in that industry alongside ADARA's data and trends. Today, we're kicking off with dining. In the weeks to come, we'll address each of these you see here, ending with cruises. We're putting a stake in the ground that when travelers are comfortable taking a cruise, we will truly have transitioned to a new version of normal. As you might expect, dining reservations are slowly beginning to climb back up after a precipitous drop caused by the pandemic and shuttering of restaurants. We've divided the year into 4 periods: pre-COVID, January 1 through 15 March, COVID, 16 March to 30 April, The early uptrend that began May 1 through 31 May, and the current period covering the last 5 to 6 weeks from the 1st of June to 7th of July. The line on the chart represents the volume of dining reservations made each week and are indexed to the first week of 2020. It's essentially flat from the end of March to the beginning of May, when it begins to slowly pick up. You can see towards the end of June, there was a sawtooth as it dips and then begins to rise again. We're roughly at 30% of the volume of table reservation bookings of where we were pre-COVID. Let's dig into these numbers. We'll be looking at how consumers behaved differently in each time period based on age, based on wealth. We'll also explore how the distance people are traveling for dining out at restaurants has shifted over these different periods. We examined dining from the beginning of the year, the pre-COVID period, to the last 6 weeks and found some interesting results. Before I reveal which age group increased the most proportionally, let's get a read on our assumptions and expectations. We've all been tracking consumer sentiment surveys and scanning the news. So go ahead and make your estimate. Was it the 65 plus year olds that are dining out more now? 50 to 64, 40 to 49, 30 to 39, or the 20 to 29 year olds? I'll give you a minute. You can either declare that in chat or write it down for yourself in terms of who you think which group has grown the most proportionally between pre-COVID to now. All right, let's go ahead and reveal the answer. Turns out that across age groups, the proportions of bookings is remarkably stable. The variations were only 1 to 2%. Now, once you have the information, it's easy to rationalize it. The photos you see of younger folks gathering at the beach bars are just that, they're bars, places that don't require reservations. That data wouldn't be captured here on this chart. The people that tend to dine out the most are 40 to 49, and perhaps they see themselves as slightly less vulnerable. So that proportion didn't shift, and those that are most vulnerable, hardly register on this chart given their low level of online dining reservations to begin with. So perhaps that's a bit of surprise, but it helps recalibrate in terms of what we're seeing based on dining reservations across all of 2020 from pre-COVID to this current period. We also have data on wealth categories, and we looked at dining demand relative to that characteristic. Like what we saw with age groups, there was tremendous consistency across each of the time periods of 2020. One thing to point out that our designations capture the upper economic levels. The 4 categories are based on primarily home equity values and some other factors mixed in. But it starts with the extremely affluent, those with home equity of at least $1 million and many times far above that. Affluent covers those with net housing value between $500,000 and $1 million. Secure homeowners have paid off mortgages or home equity $250,000 to $500,000. And finally, that last category are homeowners with equities below $250,000. All in all, it's a very financially secure group. And while the overall volume of dining reservations has dropped by 2/3, the proportion of people in each of those categories that are going and dining out is very, very stable over time. Next, we looked at how dining patterns were changing for 3 metro areas, starting with Miami. We calculated the distance from the diner's residence to the restaurant they booked, and then bucketed them into one of 3 categories. Travel means that the distance between the booker's home and the restaurant was 500 miles or more away, and likely part of a vacation trip. Think of it as a dining reservation someone in Los Angeles made in conjunction with a vacation they were taking in Miami. Near travel is under 500 miles, but more than 50. So in this case, for example, Savannah, Georgia is just under 500 miles to Miami. Someone planning a weekend getaway and booking a restaurant in Miami would fall into this category. The last grouping is local, which is under 50 miles. That example would be someone in Boca Raton going to Miami for a night out. The chart on the left shows the proportions over the 4 periods of 2020, pre-COVID, that's the beginning of March to beginning of January to mid-March, all the way to the current period, June 1st to July 7th. Note that the current volume of bookings is down to 13.4%, a huge drop of the pre-COVID volume. The chart on the right is the same information displayed proportionally to get a better sense of how the distance people are traveling to dine in Miami has been changing. That early upward trend from the 1st of May to throughout May, as well as the current period, both show a larger proportion of local dining compared to the earlier part of the year. People that are booking that are within 50 miles of Miami. We compared a less tourist-oriented city, Chicago, to perennial tourist favorite, Las Vegas. You see extremely little variation in the proportion of the types of diners, whether they're local or had traveled a distance to the restaurant, across the first half of the year for Chicago. As you track across the pink, the purple, and the blue, it's all dead even. By contrast, in Las Vegas, even as the volume of diners dropped during March and April, the proportion of those traveling in from more than 500 miles away stayed steady. During the early uptrend in May, it's local diners that are increasing their share of the volume, while in the current period, there's growth in those traveling in from 500 miles away, which would include beyond Los Angeles, for example, as well as those even further away. This last slide on restaurant reservations looks at how the booking window, the period between making the reservation and the date of the event, has shifted. Again, we're looking at 4 periods that cover the first half of 2020, pre-COVID, and the uptrend in May, along with the current period that started in June. I've added a dotted line to mark the proportion of reservations for meals that were booked for that same week. For pre-COVID period, it's 79%, increases to 83% for the early uptrend, and continues to 85% for the current period. That increase towards spontaneity suggests some pent-up demand for dining. Moving beyond dining, we've got a high-level chart to share on housing as we collect data as part of our home buyer data consortium. It's powered by 150,000 national regional broker brands, including Coldwell Banker, Remax, and Century 21. This chart divides the year into those 4 COVID periods. You see a dip in search behavior through mid-March and April. It's beginning to pick up in the current period. Positive sign to see consumer interest in these types of large dollar purchases. And then one slide on the travel front, 2 charts from our website where we track in real-time air and hotel bookings. On the left, you see air bookings. The purple line is leisure family, turquoise is leisure solo and couples, pink line is business. While the trend was up over most of June, it's begun to flatten out and even trend down. By contrast, the chart on the left shows hotel bookings, same color coding for the type of travel. While there's been a slight drop off in the peaks of the past couple of weeks, it shows a much more robust trend comparing air to hotel. Moreover, if you look at the charts on our website to see the advanced booking windows, you'll see that the 0 to 15 day window, trips coming up within the next couple of weeks, is coming in hot with some really big spikes. So that again suggests some pent-up demand for hotels. We debuted our scorecard last time, took positive reviews. Here's this week's update. Going row by row, the first slide today showed that while dining reservation volume is trending up, it's still down by 2/3 compared to the start of the year. We're rating that as a negative. Dining is one of those initial activities we think consumers are going to get involved in. So it's a bit disappointing to see just how far down it is compared to pre-COVID. The consistency in both age and wealth categories is positive, demonstrates stability. Shift towards dining reservations for the same week of the booking is a positive sign because that means immediate demand. The shifts in the distance people are traveling to dine is rated as neutral, as is the housing search data, which is trending up, expected though based on seasonality. Even though there are some bright spots with hotels, that wasn't enough to offset the downward trend in air. Last time we rated the condition as somewhat optimistic. We're downgrading it just a bit today to slightly pessimistic based on the trends we've shared today. Let me ask, how does that compare with your assessment? Consider what consumer behaviors are your markers for recovery, and how are you tracking against assumptions on the pace of recovery?